Hey, this is Jono. Now, your community engagement kind of sucks, right? You started a community, but people aren't really coming back. They're not coming back to reply, to kick off new conversations. They're not even using those little emoji buttons to like things. They're not answering questions. They're not mentoring and collaborating. And when you look at the starry-eyed vision of online communities and building a movement, it just ain't really happening in your community. So how do you fix it? Well, in this video, I want to walk through the 5 reasons why people just ain't engaging and how you can fix them. Now let's start with the basics. What is your target goal for building community engagement? Now, when we think about engagement, what I'm talking about here is anyone who's interacting with your community, whether they're using their finger on a mobile phone or they're using a keyboard on their laptop to interact with the community. It is not people who are just browsing, right? People who show up and just browse and consume content. Those people are not engaging. This is people who are actually typing things in and interacting. They're replying, they're posting, they're liking, they are answering questions, they're sharing interesting finds on the internet, they're sharing successes and wins in your community. That's what we're focusing on. And the target metric that we've got here is if you look at, let's say, 100 people in your community, you should be shooting for around 20 of those people should be actively participating on a week-to-week basis. 20% of your community should be active, okay? The way in which we measure that is to use a metric called DAU/MAU. This is daily active users divided by monthly active users, right? So the number of daily people who are being active divided by the number of monthly people who are being active. This is a metric that's inspired by the SaaS world who build applications that run in your web browser, things like Salesforce and Canva and things like that. And this is a metric that they often use to identify and track the number of people who are actively using their products. And we do the same thing in your community. There's even tools like Discourse, which is a forum platform, has even got DAU/MAU in the analytics, so you can actually track it right there in the analytics. Now, let me be clear about something. It might sound fairly easy to get 20% of your community to be active, but it's actually really hard.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Because you've got to create such a compelling environment where people are coming back every single week that they want to engage, they want to type, they want to respond, they want to share their insights and their experience. It's so easy for people to just show up and browse. We want to get people to post. So when you set that target of 20%, don't expect to achieve that immediately. It's going to take consistent work month after month to get to that ultimate goal.
Wait, I did my waiting! 12 years of it!
But here's the good news. I'm going to walk through these 5 reasons why people are not engaging in your community and give you some concrete next steps that you can focus on to really move the needle. So reason number 1 is that you just have not dialed in your audience, okay? I've worked with hundreds of different companies over the course of my 22-year career in helping them to optimize their communities. And I always ask the same question right at the beginning of any kind of engagement. Who exactly is your audience?
Wait a minute. Who are you?
It's amazing how many people just give me this kind of blank expression and really have no idea. And you need to know exactly, down to the details, exactly who your audience is. If you don't know who your audience is, how can you possibly build enough value for them to keep them coming back? So let's say, for example, you have got a community wrapped around a product or a service and you're selling to businesses. So your audience is going to be businesses. Here's some questions you need to ask yourself. Which industry are these businesses operating in? How are they funded? Are they seed stage? Are they Series A, Series B? Are they public companies? Who in that business are you targeting? Are you targeting executives or engineers? Are you targeting marketing folks or HR folks or product folks? Whereabouts are people based in the world in these businesses? Are you focusing on North America or Europe or Asia or elsewhere? Now, when you've got some answers to those questions, now you can ask the most important question of all, and that is, what are your audience's pain points?
What is your problem?
So when they're laid in bed in the morning and their alarm clock goes off, and they're thinking about their day, and they're thinking about what they don't want to do that day, what are those things? What sucks for them? What is miserable for them to do? Those are those pain points. And what we want to do is we want to fix them. We want to provide them with quick wins to make those pain points either go away or make them a lot more palatable to deal with.
I can do it myself.
So sit down with a piece of paper and ideally a couple of colleagues or friends and just brainstorm all of the different things that suck about your audience's lives. Because what you're going to do is you're going to use that as the foundation, the basis in which you're going to add value and start driving some of that community engagement. So this now leads us to the second reason why people are probably not engaging in your community, and that is, spoiler alert, you're just not offering enough value. Now imagine this. Imagine you opened up Netflix and it was the same 3 TV shows every single time you opened it. Would you go back? No, of course you wouldn't. Well, I would if those TV shows were like RoboCop and Commando, Raw Deal, you know, some of those old 80s action movies.
Get to the chopper!
But for most people, you just wouldn't open it up every single time. It just doesn't offer enough value. The reason why we go to Netflix is not because it's Netflix, it's because of the content and the value that it offers. We need to take the same approach to our community. The vast majority of communities that I see out there are unbelievably boring.
It was like having the life sucked out of you.
They just have like Q&A, 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 and that's it. There's no reason for somebody to go back. Why would I want to go back to a community and just watch people answering each other's questions? So what you want to do is take those pain points that you defined earlier on, flip them inside out and identify a quick win for each of them and make that value inside of your community.
I'm on it!
Now, what I recommend you do here is that every week you have one new piece of content. This could be a blog post or a video, something that you add into your community right inside of Slack or Discord or your forum or whatever it might be that solves one of those pain points. But then also you want to kick off 2 what I call conversation starters. And this is where you kick off a discussion, where you ask about those pain points, where you ask for solutions, where you ask for people's experiences. You can also kick off conversation starters like, what are people's favorite books? What conferences are they going to? What challenges are they facing right now? The whole point is to provide a vessel for people to start replying, engaging, and participating with each other. This in itself is going to significantly increase the likelihood of driving positive engagement. But hang on a second, we're not even halfway there, because the third reason why people are just not engaging in your community is because you are not responding enough. Now, this is something that happens all the time in communities. Somebody joins a brand new community, they go into the community platform like Discord or Slack or Discourse, whatever, they post a question or they share a little piece of insight, and what are they rewarded with? The faint sound of silence, and it's the worst possible first experience to someone joining a community. Now, here's the question. What would be the best possible experience for somebody joining a community? It would be that somebody would welcome you. They would say, hey, thank you for joining. I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Would you share a little bit about what you're interested in learning or getting out of this community? Where they make you feel welcome, where they give you a sense of belonging, where you feel like you can be yourself, where you feel like you can learn a lot, but you can also bring a lot to the community. That's what we want as our ideal first experience, okay?
Oh, that's right! Oh my God! Hey everybody, we just made first contact!
But all too often, they just get crickets. Okay, so how do you deal with that awkward, soul-crushing, just bone-chilling silence for a new community member who's just joined? Well, what you do is you engage in something that I call the awkward small talk pattern. Now, imagine that you have a party at your house and that you say that the start time for your party is 7 p.m. And most of us have got the good courtesy to show up a little bit later, so we're not the first people to arrive. But some people just arrive right on the dot at 7 p.m. or they get there a couple of minutes early, right? Now imagine you've got 2 people who get there really early. You've got John and you've got Sarah, and they don't know each other. What do you do as a host? What you do is you engage in awkward small talk. You say, oh, John, I know that you're into cars. Sarah's into cars as well. So Sarah, didn't you just get a Kia recently? And she's like, oh yeah, I just got this new Kia. Oh, what do you like about the Kia, Sarah? And she starts sharing her thoughts on the Kia. And then you say, oh, John, you just got a Fiat like a couple of years ago, is that right? And he's like, yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the Fiat. Why is that, John? Well, it's because Fiat, I think, stands for found in a tip, or it might be fixed it again, Tony. And that's pretty much been my experience of owning this Fiat. By the way, can you tell that my first car was a Fiat? Anyway, so what you want to do is you want to try and find ways to connect these 2 people together and just keep the conversation going. So when that new person joins your community and they ask a question, make sure they get a response.
What do you want?
When they thank you for that response, continue the conversation.
That's the thanks I get for coming up here to save your ungrateful behind.
Right? Ask them, oh, why did you join the community? What are you interested in the community? What do you want to get out of the community? Make sure that you go and respond, okay? So just respond to every single person that goes into your community, every single message that goes into your community. Like every response, respond to every response. Keep the conversation going over and over again, because what you're doing is you're building muscle memory with that person to make them feel like it's okay to respond and to interact. And that's how you get your engagement level up.
I knew this, I studied this at school. I knew what this meant, but not anymore. I forgot.
All right, so the 4th reason why people are just not engaging in your community is because, and I don't know how to break this to you, well, your community's really boring, like profoundly dull. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, hang on a second, Bacon. You don't know if my community is boring or not. You're just making an assumption here. Well, if your community is like a lot of communities out there, then believe me, it is really quite uninteresting and boring, okay?
Are you sure?
And unfortunately, for a lot of community members, their experience of communities is going to be a little bit like being in one of those really boring meetings at work, where there's a bunch of people droning on about a bunch of things you're not particularly interested in. It's very dry, very formal, it's very buttoned up, it's not very interesting, it's not very entertaining. And it's just really hard to not try and zone out in those kinds of situations, right? I will go and look at a selection of online communities, and you kind of get that vibe. And we want to be the opposite of that. Now, we don't want to be clickbaity. We don't want to be offensive. We don't want to be controversial. We just want to be exciting. You want to liven it up. Talk like a human being. Use interesting words. Use interesting imagery. Use interesting ways of phrasing conversations. Create hooks that really bring people in, that generate curiosity, that evoke a curious mind, okay? There's many, many examples on the internet that you can go and find of people who are just really evocative in the way that they communicate and engage with each other. Go and use that as food for thought and apply that into your community.
I will keep that in mind.
So the next step here is just try some things, right? Some things will work, some things won't work.
It is what it is.
Don't try to be someone you're not, but just try to make things really exciting and interesting in your community. Because believe me, if it's just Q&A, 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 that is so dull, it's so uninteresting, people just ain't gonna come back. All right, so the fifth reason why people are just not engaging in your community is that you're babying them. Now, what I mean by this is that in every human structure, whether it's a family, whether it's a workplace, whether it's an in-person community or meeting or event, there's a power dynamic. There's always a power dynamic, right? So for example, if you go for a job interview and you really want a job, the person who's sat on the other side of the interview desk, who's hiring, has all the power, right? You feel like you need to go in there and kind of impress them, to say the right things, to appear the right way, to have the right kind of experience, the right kind of questions to impress them so you can get the job.
Everything I do is the attitude of an award winner because I've won an award.
It puts you on the back foot a little bit, right? Now, if you look at a typical community, there is an implied power dynamic where the person who's running the community manager or the developer relations person or the evangelist, whoever it might be, is kind of driving the car.
I guess I'm being spontaneous. Somebody help me!
And that all the community members are along for the ride, that the person who's building the community is making all the decisions and running the show. And that's actually a really bad situation to be in, because then everyone in your community is expecting you as the community manager to making all the decisions and to be right on those decisions more often than you are wrong. So what we need to do is we need to break that power dynamic. And this is the conversation you need to have with your community members. All right, everybody, I'm going to promise you something as the community manager in this community. So while I'm going to commit to you that I will use every ounce of my energy to make this community a thriving, engaging place with a strong sense of belonging, I also need you to commit to this as well.
We've all had to do this.
Right? Because I'm not a magician. I'm not a mind reader. I can't just guess what you all want and be 100% spot on in adding the value that you're looking for. So I need you to show up. I need you to participate. I need you to tell me what your pain points are, what you're struggling with, what kind of value you want to see in the community. I need you to give me feedback on what we're doing to make sure that I know whether I'm on the right track or whether I'm not on the right track. I need your creativity, your ideas, your insight, your experience, your expertise. If we all come together to build this community, then we'll build something that we're all proud of. But if you all just show up and just expect me to try and drive the car and you're not willing to figure out the right direction that we're going to go in and how to make this a really productive experience, we're just not going to get something that's going to be valuable for everybody.
We haven't done that yet, but we should. We're going to look into it.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I feel really kind of awkward about having that conversation with my community. I just don't know if I can do that. But I strongly encourage you to do so because it's going to give you two very distinctive benefits. First of all, you're going to equalize that power dynamic. You're going to make it very clear to your community, I'm devoted. I've got skin in the game into building this. But you have also got a huge opportunity ahead of you to shape this community as well, right? That you can play a role. You're opening the door to participation. You're opening the door to contribution, okay? And that really changes the dynamic. You're going to get much better feedback, much better input. You're going to get a much greater level of participation from your community members when you make it clear that this is a team sport, this is not a solo sport. But the second thing that it's going to give you is it's going to relieve a huge amount of anxiety. Because if you are constantly expected to be the only person who's driving that car forward and driving success, that's a lot of burden to sit on one pair of shoulders, okay? So what it's going to do is it's going to make it clear that this is something that we're all playing a role in. And that's going to make it much easier to deal with anxiety that will pop up from time to time in your community. All right, so if you're building a community around your business and either you're a community manager or you've got a community manager working for you, you should 100% consider joining my community leadership core. This is an accelerator that I put together where every quarter I generate a roadmap for my members, complete with a whole bunch of training. We get together for peer group sessions where we do shares and hot seats and we solve problems together. You've got unlimited access to me. There's a whole load of benefits attached to this. You can go and find out more about the Community Leadership Core by clicking on the link down there. And with that, I bid you farewell. I bid you the very best with your community engagement. Peace out.